Now, another thing is that, as you know, Cliff, and as I've understood it, you are from military background, your father or something?
Correct.
Yeah.
Born into it, yes.
Yeah. So you know that that world is always decades ahead of the white world. Now, Reagan, I think, was the first started to agitate for a Star Wars program. And that was when in the early 80s?
Yeah.
So you should assume that he wouldn't have clearing to do that if they weren't ready to launch some. Yeah. So that means that they've had about 30 years to tweak this stuff wherever.
And I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And in his second tour, he was advanced enough in rank, and he was there, I think, 11 or 12 months. And when he was in country at that point, he's always been a field officer and came up in the military through the Korean War and a battlefield commission. And so, the military likes guys like him, and they let him be in charge of a couple of different projects. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle. But it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from Vietnam...
You mean infrared or...
No. I'll explain.
Ordinary red.
Oh, ordinary red. Okay. So instead of when you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. It's part of our evolution, our need to find food.
So that's clever then.
Correct. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. And I won't hesitate I won't guess as to which year it was that they introduced them. But my father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. So you had some officers that were part of this cadre or this cohort of other officers that were all testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And he actually got praise from the military for the way that he dealt with all of this. But the effect was this. A gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles. And only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now. And even a greater depth, because you could also flip it and get an extra layer that was sort of yellowish that would be heat signatures as well. And they don't have those combined anymore in these goggles. Anyway, the goggles that were presented to the gunners, and my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with them, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot. And all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner in his on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but at an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" and the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. And my dad thought he was dealing with another heroin addict, but this was before it had gotten really bad in Vietnam, and the kid was not exhibiting those kind of symptoms. He was reacting to what he had seen. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter. So he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity. So it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them. But my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic gothic hell.
Jeez.
That you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees, right?
They're perceiving into an aspect of consciousness.
Correct.
Another dimension.
And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
Of course. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I know.
Me studying Pythagoreanism and vibrations, we could speak a lot about this, but let's not even go there. But one question: are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people used to see UFOs?
Correct.
Third generation or whatever they're called. Is this the same technology?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you.
And they don't connect it to heat signatures either, right? Organic.
They don't do that, and then they also don't do it with a red display. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter.
That keeps it more material.
Exactly. And at this stage, though, in Vietnam, when they introduced them, it was brief. The whole project lasted about 60 days, and then it was all canceled. And the people that...
Of course, it was so impractical.
Correct. I mean, your flotilla is shooting at each other, right?
Suddenly they had a new enemy. Don't let them know.
One that bullets didn't bother, right?
Please say you inherited one of these goggles from your father.
No.
Oh, damn.
No. That kind of stuff never happened. My dad was at a level of the military where we had to be very concerned because he used to do CID, internal criminal kind of investigations, right?
Yeah.
And so his clearances and stuff were always checked. So he was by the book kind of a fellow insofar as the military was concerned at that level. I mean, we had our phones tapped, all of that kind of.
Okay, because I was ready to book a flight to Northwest America now. I just can't.
Well, apparently we would not want to do this anyway because my father said that the single exposure, and in terms of him describing it,
made you mad.
The single exposure to the goggles that he would put on that one time had an unsettling effect on him for several weeks afterwards.
Right.
And the people that wore the red goggles, the gunners and these kind of people, were unstable at best for months. Many of them were cycled right out of the war as a result of this experience.
Yep, that so fits with the whole Vietnam War anyway. And you couldn't tell the difference. Everybody went crazy over there.
Right. But here these guys had a real reason for doing it because of the images coming in and the radiation probably.
But, I mean, imagine the energies letting loose in Vietnam at the time. No wonder that was attracting those kind of manifestations.
You're right. Now, maybe the manifestations are there continuously, always around us, but they just don't disturb us.
It's just a strata of reality, right?
Right, because we don't see them, right. And see, so here's the thing. Indeed, if we're looking at automated kinds of systems and so on, there's nothing to say that, we use projectile weapons, but that's not the only way to think of fighting wars and doing protective systems and so on. Some of them may be quite biological and indeed be mechanistic at a deep level.
And you could interact with these apparitions when you had the Google.
The apparitions could see you and you could see them. That's what caused these people to think they were under attack by these beings and to respond by shooting at them, because the things they were shooting at would point at them to each other and attempt to coordinate something.
Of course, it must have been a big deal because normally we can see them, right?
Correct.
Look at that. That guy can see us.
And you're up a couple of hundred, exactly. You're up a couple of 100 feet in the air, and this thing's flying along, and it's pointing at you, and you look around, and then it points at you again, and you have that mind-to-mind connection.
Right.
Of course, you're going to freak out and start shooting.
Yeah. Mutually, I bet.
Yeah.
And by the way, they are shooting in our atmosphere right now. With an ordinary goggles people use to UFO sightseeing.
Exactly. And I've got those goggles, and I see a lot of the UFOs and stuff. In my particular area here, I have to look over to the constellation Cassiopeia. And there I see a lot of the activity that's going on. And see, this is why, getting back just briefly to the Blue Chicken cult and the Corey Good guys, right? I had no problem accepting the idea that there would be a whistleblower that would come out of the secret space program, okay? Because I see the secret space program with the goggles flying around doing stuff. I see the big ships. I see the little triangular ships. I see what, to a military brat, are clearly logistics movements. I also see clearly what are coordinated flotilla training exercises where they're all learning to fly with each other or act in a coordinated fashion. And so I can easily understand that the secret space program exists because I can go out and see it most days that it's not raining around here. And so I was sort of expecting that, well, at some point, somebody's got a blab. But I was thinking that, it would be somewhat realistic and not this...
Yeah, like the hacker who found evidence that they even have space fleets.
Oh, McKinnon. Yeah, exactly. And they want to put him in jail.
Of course.
Now, so there's a real good indication. This guy comes on out.
Just like the Antarctica missions, you have to go by the reactions. That's the telling part.
Correct. And so here we have the reactions of the military and the government trying to put McKinnon in jail to extradite him from England for a crime that he didn't commit in their country that isn't even really a crime in our country, just because he found stuff he shouldn't have found. And they go on for years about it.
Which makes me think what ace has Assange got up his sleeve.
Yeah, what's he holding? But it also goes to the other point. If McKinnon, a kid in England with a computer, causes such a brouhaha about the secret space program, then obviously Corey Good is full of shit because no one's trying to arrest him.
They are rewarding him.
Correct. And in fact, the military and everybody, they're not even looking at him. It's like, oh, yeah, a crazy fellow. We don't care about him.
He's good for that agenda. He makes a mockery out of this thing. But then
he may even be designed. We don't know. I mean, they may just want him to do that.
Yeah, he may be a psyop, of course.
Exactly.
Many people think so. But here's the thing. We have even more evidence. We have Michael Schratt, that if anyone's listening and in touch with him, please implore him to get in touch with us. He needs to be covered. He's one of the great researchers in the serious secret space program convention research, which was kind of hijacked by the Wilcox Good crowd.
Right.
And Michael Schratt, his evidence is so tight that you can't discuss. It's not a discussion anymore when you go through his material that we are experimenting with that. But we have so pressed for time, and this isn't a UFO program.
Sure.
So I want to move on to scenario 2, and unfortunately we don't have to spend too much time on scenario 2. There's one third scenario at the end I want to spend more time on.